I've always believed that the bond between a mother and daughter could weather any storm. My daughter, Emily, has been the pride of my life. Ambitious, compassionate, someone who always seemed to know right from wrong. She was never reckless. That's what makes what I discovered so unthinkable. She met Daniel 2 years ago at a corporate fundraiser. They were perfect in that quiet, seamless way some couples are. They moved in sync. He adored her, and she loved him back with a tenderness that was impossible to fake. I liked Daniel immediately, soft-spoken, honest, the kind of man any mother would hope her daughter would marry. When he proposed, I cried tears of joy. The wedding planning brought us closer than ever. Cake tastings, floral arrangements, dress fittings, we did it all together. And yet, underneath the glow of engagement and champagne toasts, something began to shift. Something I couldn't name just yet. Daniel's father, Richard, entered our lives like a breeze too strong to ignore. He was nothing like his son. Where Daniel was modest, Richard was magnetic. Charming, with that dangerous kind of confidence that made people lean in when he spoke. Divorced, but still very much present in Daniel's life. He insisted on being involved in the planning, which at first I appreciated. But soon, his presence became overbearing. At the engagement dinner, I first noticed it. Richard and Emily, seated across from one another, shared a glance that lingered a second too long. At the time, I chalked it up to my own overactive mind. But I started watching. Not obsessively, just attentively. Little things stood out. Emily laughing too hard at his jokes. Richard placing his hand on her back for just a beat longer than necessary. Once, I walked in on them standing far too close in the kitchen, their conversation halting the moment I entered. Their faces changed. But no one said a word. I told myself it was stress. Pre-wedding nerves. Emily had always been affectionate, and Richard had that magnetic pull. Still, a mother knows when something is off. And this, whatever it was not innocent. Everything shifted the afternoon. I picked up Emily's phone by mistake. We were at my house, finalizing the guest list. Her phone buzzed on the table, face up. I glanced without thinking. A message from our "I miss you. Last night was everything. I can't stop thinking about you." My heart stopped. There was no denying it. I opened the message thread. There they were, months of messages, some short and vague, others explicit, unmistakable in their meaning. Her responses were just as revealing. "I need to see you again. We can't keep doing this, but I don't want to stop." My hands shook. I couldn't read more. I couldn't breathe. When she came back into the room, laughing about a bridesmaid's dress fitting, I stared at her like she was a stranger. My Emily. My sweet, grounded, thoughtful Emily, having an affair with her fiancé's father. I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door. My reflection in the mirror looked like someone who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. My stomach turned, not just from the betrayal, but from the impossibility of the situation. What kind of mother has to confront her daughter about this? What kind of daughter does this?
I didn't speak of it that day.
I couldn't. The words refused to form. My mind spun in loops. What if Daniel finds out? What if this ruins both families? What if Richard is manipulating her? What if she's the one who pursued it? That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The silence in the room felt oppressive. I could still hear her laughter, see the text on that screen, like it was burned into the back of my eyelids. One truth echoed through me. Nothing about this wedding was what it seemed. And yet, I still couldn't bring myself to stop it. Not yet. Because before I could act, I needed to understand why. And for that, I would have to ask the one question no mother should ever have to voice out loud. "Emily, are you in love with him?" The next morning, the question echoed in my chest like a slow drumbeat. "Are you in love with him?" I hadn't slept. The silence between the ticking of the clock felt louder than anything else. I stared at the hallway outside her room, rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd keep calm. But there's no script for this kind of confrontation, no words soft enough to carry the weight of betrayal. She was in the kitchen when I finally approached. Hair still damp from the shower, face fresh, humming softly to herself. So innocent. So unaware of the storm just outside the edge of her world. Emily, I said, voice more brittle than I intended. We need to talk. Her humming stopped. She turned slowly, a plate in her hand. Is everything okay? I didn't waste time. I saw your phone yesterday. I read the messages from Richard. The plate slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. She froze, staring down at the broken pieces like they might somehow explain this all away. When she finally met my eyes, hers were glassy wide. Mom, she whispered, please. I held up a hand. No lies, Emily.
Not now.
Her face crumpled. She sank into a chair like the weight of her choices had finally caught up. For a long time, she said nothing. I watched her, unsure whether to feel rage or heartbreak. Finally, she spoke, voice barely audible. It started the night of the wine tasting, after the engagement dinner. I was drunk. We both were.
It was a mistake.
A mistake? I said, my voice cracking. A mistake is once, not a months-long affair. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I know how awful it is. I never meant for it to go this far. But it wasn't just about sex. I felt seen, understood. He made me feel alive in a way I didn't expect. I stared at her, stunned. You're marrying his son, Emily. I know, she sobbed. And I love Daniel. I do. But Richard, it's different. It's not right, but it's real. The words gutted me. You say you love Daniel, I said, trying to keep my voice level, but you're willing to let him stand at that altar not knowing any of this? She shook her head. I was going to end it.
I swear.
After the wedding. I thought once we were married, it would stop. That's not how love or guilt works, I said coldly. She looked away. I don't know what to do. I left her there, too overwhelmed to offer comfort or guidance. I needed answers, not apologies. That afternoon, I drove to Richard's office. He looked surprised to see me, but invited me in with his usual polished charm. His eyes didn't flinch. He wasn't ashamed. He was composed, calm. That made it worse. You've been sleeping with my daughter, I said, skipping pleasantries. He didn't deny it. Yes. Do you understand what you've done? He leaned back, folding his hands. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. Emily's an incredible woman. And in case you think I took advantage, I didn't. This wasn't one-sided. She's half your age, I snapped. She's your future daughter-in-law. He shrugged, as if that fact had become irrelevant. Emotions aren't governed by titles. She came to me. It's complicated. No, Richard, I said, standing. It's vile. You've destroyed your son's future. He looked at me, unblinking. Then stopped the wedding. I walked out. My hands trembled on the steering wheel all the way home. He didn't love Emily. He loved control, having the ability to unravel what others built. That night, I sat alone in the dark, replaying both conversations. Emily's sobs, Richard's cold indifference. And beneath it all, Daniel's smile in my memory, the way he looked at Emily with absolute trust. I couldn't hold this secret any longer. My silence made me complicit. But how do you destroy a life to preserve the truth? By morning, I'd made a decision. I would give Emily one last chance to tell Daniel herself. If she didn't, I would. 2 days passed. Emily didn't speak much. She moved through the house like a shadow, quiet, jittery, distracted. The weight of the decision I placed on her shoulders was suffocating, but it was no more than the truth required. The wedding was a week away. Daniel came by that evening, arms full of sample menus and honeymoon brochures. He smiled as he spoke, so unaware, so proud to be building a life with the woman he loved. I could hardly look him in the eye. Emily sat stiffly beside him, nodding, laughing on cue, but I saw the fractures in her composure. Her hands shook when she reached for her glass. Her eyes rarely met his. When he left, she stood by the door long after it closed. I'll tell him tomorrow, she whispered. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The next afternoon, Daniel called me. His voice was hollow, strained.
She ended it, he said.
No explanation. Just tears. Said she couldn't go through with the wedding. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry, Daniel. I don't understand, he continued, voice breaking. Did I do something wrong? No, I whispered. You didn't do anything wrong. He thanked me for listening and hung up. I stood frozen, phone still pressed to my ear long after the line went dead. The final thread had snapped. It was over. Emily disappeared for a while. She told me she needed time, space to think. I didn't argue. She left without telling anyone where she was going. All I knew was that she wasn't with Richard. That much I made sure of. Word spread fast. The wedding was off. Speculation bloomed. Cold feet, stress, some private fight. Richard played his role perfectly, pretending to be just as stunned as everyone else. He and Daniel grew distant. I suspect Daniel sensed something but couldn't bear to name it. Months passed. I heard from Emily through short, infrequent calls. She was staying near the coast, working part-time, seeing a therapist. Her voice was different, muted, stripped of the brightness it once had. But there was something else there too, a quiet determination, maybe even the early signs of growth. One Sunday morning, she came home. She looked thinner, older, like someone who had walked through fire and made it out with burns she hadn't begun to treat. We sat on the porch, wrapped in silence until she finally spoke. I wanted to tell him. I tried. But I couldn't. I couldn't destroy him with the truth. You still did, I said gently. She nodded, guilt heavy in her eyes. I know. But if he never finds out, maybe he can heal without hating both of us. I think he already suspects, I said. But maybe you're right. We sat in silence again. The breeze carried the scent of early autumn. Leaves danced across the lawn. I hate who I became, she whispered. I reached over and took her hand. You're not finished becoming. You made terrible choices. But that's not the sum of who you are. She began to cry. Deep, broken sobs I hadn't heard since she was a child. I didn't try to stop her. I just held her hand, the way mothers do when they can't fix the pain, only witness it. Richard tried reaching out a few times. Emily didn't answer. She told me later she didn't know if what they had was love or something more toxic, an escape, an illusion. But either way, it was over.
And Daniel?
He never asked for the truth. We never gave it. Maybe one day he'll find it on his own. Maybe he already has. Or maybe he'll carry the silence, like a scar that only itches when it rains. This story doesn't end with redemption. There was no dramatic apology, no cinematic reunion. Just 3 fractured lives trying to move forward with what remained. But for the first time in months, as Emily sat beside me and watched the leaves fall, I felt something like peace. Not because everything was okay, but because finally, the lies had stopped.